Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're doing something a little different. We're looking at a stack of sources that don't just tell a story, they really reconstruct a lost world. We're going back to the 1840s.
Specifically New Orleans.
Yeah.
And before we even get into the characters or the plot, I think we have to talk about the air.
The air. You mean like the atmosphere?
I mean the literal air.
Mhm.
The atmosphere, yes, but also what you're breathing. Reading through this material, the first thing that hits you isn't a character's voice.
Yeah.
It's the oppressive weight of the environment itself. It's the 1840s, it's New Orleans, and it is dangerously hot.
Yeah, the source material keeps coming back to this idea of the city steaming. And it's not just humidity they're talking about, is it? It feels like something more organic.
It is. It absolutely is. You have to understand the geography to get the psychology of this story. New Orleans is essentially a bowl floating in a swamp. The water table is so high that you can't dig down more than a foot or two without hitting water.
Right, so that's why all the tombs are above ground.
Exactly. The
Right.
famous cities of the dead. But in the middle of summer in the 1840s, it's not just the tombs. The ground itself is saturated. So when the text says the cemeteries are steaming,
That's literal. They're not being poetic.
it's a completely literal description. You have decomposition, swamp gas, the intense, relentless heat. It all creates this miasma. The author even calls it the breath of life of the city, which is just a terrifying paradox,
The
isn't it?
breath of life is death.
You're breathing in death just by walking down the street. It sets the stakes immediately. This is not a place where life is guaranteed or even expected to be long. Everything is fragile.
And mixed in with that smell, that sort of rotting organic smell, you have the river, the Mississippi.
Which is the lifeblood. It's the economic artery of the entire continent at this point.
Yeah.
The sources describe this wilderness of masts
Yeah.
rising above the levee markets. And that's so important because it tells you why everyone is here.
This isn't some sleepy southern town.
Not at all. It's a global transit hub. You've got French, Spanish, English, African, Caribbean. All of these cultures, these peoples, are colliding in this humid, steaming pressure cooker of a city.
And that collision, that specific mixture, creates the group we're really focusing on today. We're not just looking at New Orleans in a broad sense. We're diving into the world of the gens de couleur libre.
A free people of color.
And I want to pause here for a second, because I think for a lot of listeners, when you think of the antebellum South, you think of a very binary system. White masters and black slaves. This is a curveball.
It's a huge curveball. We need to be really clear about who these people were. They aren't enslaved, but they also aren't full citizens. Not by a long shot.
It's a third caste.
Caste is exactly the right word. In the 1840s, New Orleans had this very distinct three-tiered society. You had the white ruling class at the top, you had the massive enslaved population at the bottom, but right in the middle, you had this prosperous, often wealthy, highly educated French-speaking class of free people of color.
The material describes it as a world where worlds met over the back fence, gallery to gallery. So they're living right next to white people.
Right next to them, side by side. They own property, and, it's a complex historical reality, but sometimes they owned slaves themselves. They were the city's artisans, the tailors, the undertakers, the musicians. They were predominantly Catholic, very cultured, but, and this is the giant but that defines their entire existence, they lived under a legal ceiling that was constantly being lowered.
So they can have money, they can have property, but they don't have the vote.
They don't have the vote. They can't sit on juries. And most critically, for our story today, they cannot testify against a white person in court.
Wow.
Think about that. No matter how wealthy you are, no matter how respected you are in your community, if a white man robs you or assaults you or breaks a contract with you, you are legally voiceless.
Which creates a very specific kind of psychological pressure, I'd imagine. You have to be perfect. You have to be beyond reproach because the law itself will not protect you.
Perfection as a survival strategy. Keep that phrase in mind. It is the engine that drives this entire narrative.
Okay. So into this high-pressure, steaming, incredibly complex environment, steps our protagonist, or rather, I should say, runs our protagonist, Marcel Ste.
Oh, so. Yes.
He's 14 years old, and the way the text introduces him is just so striking. He's running full tilt right down the middle of the Rue Saint-Anne, chest heaving, and he's stalking a woman.
But look at how he's dressed. That's the first clue.
He looks like a gentleman in miniature. He's wearing a silk tie, a little jeweled stick pin. He's carrying a missal, the Catholic prayer book.
He is a performance. Everything about him is a performance designed to signal, I am safe. I am pious. I am respectable. I am not a threat. But there's something about his physical description that we really need to unpack because the author spends a lot of time on it.
It's the contrast, isn't it? The text says his skin is lighter than honey, and it makes a point of saying he's actually lighter skinned than many of the white people watching him run past. He has these large, vivid blue eyes. He has blonde hair.
But, and this is the key, the hair is tightly kinked.
Right. It hugs his head like a cap.
Yeah.
And the text says this specific contrast, the light skin and blue eyes with that hair texture, makes him distinctly African.
Now, let me ask you, does that description surprise you at all?
Honestly.
Yes.
I mean, if you just read the first part, blonde, blue-eyed, fair skin, you wouldn't think distinctly African. Is the author projecting that, or would people in 1840 New Orleans really see him that way?
That is the crucial question. And the answer is yes,
Yeah.
they absolutely would. You have to remember that New Orleans in this period was obsessed with anatomizing people. That's the word the source uses. People were trained from birth to look for the mark.
What do you mean by the mark?
The supposed signs of African ancestry. They'd look at the moons of fingernails. They'd look at the texture of hair, the shape of a nose. It was this bizarre, paranoid, almost forensic science of race.
It sounds exhausting, just constantly scanning everyone you meet.
It is exhausting. It's paranoid. Because if Marcel is that light, he technically could cross the line. He could leave New Orleans, go to New York, or maybe to France, and just live as a white man. But he hasn't. He is signaling his identity, his membership in the gens de couleur, through that hair texture, through his community, through his very presence.
The text even calls him exquisite. It says the women, both white and of color, just adore him.
He's the golden boy. He's the perfect child. He pays his mother's bills. He's 14 years old, and he's essentially the man of the house. He doesn't climb trees. He doesn't get his knees dirty. He is the repository of all the family's hopes and dreams. He is the living proof. Look at Marcel. He is the evidence that we are just as good, just as refined as the whites.
Until he isn't.
Until the switch flips.
And it flips hard. He turns 14, and suddenly that missile is gone. He's buying tobacco. He's sneaking into cabarets and drinking absinthe until they kick him out. But this isn't just normal teenage rebellion, is it? The source material paints it as something much darker.
Much darker. It becomes morbid. He starts hanging around the French market, but not to buy fruit or flowers. He's watching the butchers. He stands there for hours, just staring at these massive sides of bloody beef being hacked apart.
And the Irish. We have to talk about his fascination with the Irish.
The wraiths, that's what he calls them.
He goes down to the levee, to the docks, specifically to watch the ships unload Irish immigrants. The source even names the ship the HMS Catherine.
Which was a real ship, by the way. This detail is meant to anchor us in a very specific historical moment.
So he watches them stumble off the ship, sick and starving, and then he follows the carts that take them either to the charity hospital or straight to the Bayou Cemetery. And the narrative poses this really poignant question here. Death is everywhere in New Orleans. Why would a boy go out of his way to stare at it?
To understand that, we have to understand who the Irish were in 1840s New Orleans. This is the absolute height of the Great Famine. These people are arriving literally starving, sick with typhus, with nothing but the rags on their backs. And in the very strange racial hierarchy of New Orleans, they are technically white, but socially, they are at the absolute bottom of the ladder.
You mean lower than the gens de couleur?
In terms of wealth, community standing, respect, absolutely. But here's the darker economic reality that Marcel seems to be discovering. They were often considered cheaper than slaves.
Wait, really? Explain that math. That sounds counterintuitive.
It's a deeply cynical calculus. If a slave owner has a dangerous job that needs doing, say, digging a canal in a fever-ridden swamp or loading massive cotton bales on a levee, and one of his slaves gets killed, that owner loses a significant investment, maybe $1,000, which was a fortune. That's a capital loss.
Okay.
But if an Irish laborer dies doing that same job, you just hire another one for $1 a day. His life has no capital value to the employer.
That is unbelievably callous.
It's the brutal economics of the time. So imagine Marcel, this beautiful boy in his silk tie and cologne, standing there on the levee, watching these starving white people being treated as more disposable than the enslaved population. He's seeing, for the first time, that whiteness isn't some magical shield, not if you're poor and powerless.
So what is he looking for in their faces? What's the obsession?
I think he's trying to understand the real machinery of his city. He's been raised in this world of lace curtains and polite French, a world that tries to pretend the brutality doesn't exist. And now he's realizing that his own respectability his family status, is just a fragile facade built over the same bone and blood and suffering. He's looking for something real underneath all the performance.
And that search for something real leads him directly to Juliet Mercier.
The object of his obsession, the woman he's stalking down the Rue Sainte-Anne.
Now, Juliet is quite a character. The neighbors literally call her a public offense.
She is the walking, breathing nightmare scenario for the gens de couleur. She represents everything they fear. She has money. She was once a great beauty, but she has lost her mind. She lives in this ruined mansion on the corner of St. Anne and Dauphine. She nails boards over her windows. She chases her neighbors with an axe.
An axe! And she lives with chickens and cats inside the house.
It's a portrait of total social decay. And for a community obsessed with respectability, she is terrifying. But Marcel is fascinated. And we find out why through a conversation he overhears it between his mother, Cécile, and his white father, Philippe.
Right, Philippe is the one who drops the key pieces of information. He mentions that Juliet was the daughter of a Haitian veteran.
A rebel slave from Saint-Domingue, what we now know as Haiti, a man who fought in the Haitian Revolution. Now, Philippe, being a white planter, speaks of this with utter disdain. He talks about ragged blacks come to cut our throats. But you have to imagine what that means to Marcel. To hear that this mad woman is the daughter of a revolutionary, that must have sparked something in him.
But the real reason she went mad, or so the story goes, is because of her son.
A man named Christophe.
Exactly. Christophe left. He went to Paris. And when he left, the gossip says Juliet just died on the vine. She stopped opening the blinds. She stopped seeing people. She stopped living.
So Marcel isn't just stalking a mad woman for the thrill of it. He's trying to get to Christophe.
He's trying to touch the legend. He thinks that if he can just connect with Juliet, maybe he can understand the man who actually escaped this world.
Which brings us perfectly to the man himself. Segment 2, The Shadow of the Idol. Christophe Mercier.
He is the sun that everyone in this small world is orbiting, even though he's an ocean away in Paris.
He's the one who made it. He's living the dream, right?
He is the ultimate success story for the gens de couleur. He's a famous author in Paris. His novel, Nuit de Charlotte, is a sensation. He's writing essays for the Paris press about his Eastern travels, about art, about music. He is a man of letters on a world stage.
The community is just incredibly proud of him. The text has this amazing line, when you die, you go to Paris. That is such a telling phrase, isn't it? When you die, you go to Paris. It implies that Paris is heaven. It's the afterlife. It's the place where the racial judgments of New Orleans don't exist. Where you can just be a man, an artist, a genius without the constant weight of your caste. It represents total, absolute freedom.
And the rumors about his life there are just wild. He drinks champagne with Victor Hugo. He dines with the king, Louis Philippe. He lives on the Isle St. Louis.
Yeah, there are other rumors. Darker rumors that circulate.
Yeah, let's talk about those, because not everyone buys into the Paris is heaven narrative completely.
Specifically, the Lermontant family, who we'll get to in a moment, they hear different stories through their own channels. They hear that he smokes hashish, that he gets into public quarrels in the streets, that he gets so drunk he has to be carried home by a white Englishman who's become his sort of caretaker.
So there's this duality. Is he a celebrated genius living in perfect freedom? Or is he a dissolute mess who's lost his way and is sort of propped up by his friends?
For the boys, for Marcel and his best friend Richard, it almost doesn't matter. The details are irrelevant. He is a god. He did the impossible. He left New Orleans and he made the white world respect him on his own terms.
But then comes the catalyst, the bombshell. Marcel has stolen something.
He's stolen a newspaper clipping. He took it from Richard's desk. It's a clipping from a Paris newspaper, and it changes the entire dynamic of the story.
It says Christophe is coming back to New Orleans.
And not just for a visit. He is returning to New Orleans with a mission to found a school for the members of his race.
This is huge. I mean, why is this so disruptive? Why is it a bombshell and not just good news?
Because it completely shatters the established narrative. The narrative is you succeed by leaving. You escape. You go to Paris. You pass for white if you can. Or you just live as a free artist in a more tolerant society. You don't come back. You don't come back to the segregation, to the three-caste system, to the humidity and the steaming cemeteries.
By coming back to open a school, he's saying there's a future here in New Orleans.
Precisely. And that forces Marcel and Richard to confront their own futures in a way they never had to before. If Christophe, the god, is coming back, what does that mean for them? For Marcel, it validates his obsession. It makes the legend tangible and real. And for both of them, it forces them to ask a terrifying question. Do we have to leave to be great, or could we actually be great here?
Speaking of Richard, We absolutely have to talk about the best friend. Segment 3, the burden of the giant,
Richard Lermontant. He is the perfect foil for Marcel in every single way.
where Marcel is blonde, fair, and reckless. Richard is tall, dark-haired, and anxious. Deeply anxious.
He is obsessed with perfection. The text describes him as having a constant and incurable anxiety.
Yeah.
He can't sit in a room if the furniture isn't perfectly straight. He can't put down a book he doesn't fully understand. He is driven by duty.
And he's tall. Like, really, really tall.
He's 16, and he already towers over every other boy his age. And for him, this is not a blessing. It's a source of profound dread.
Why? I mean, being tall is usually seen as a good thing.
Because of his ancestor, a man named Jean-Baptiste Lermontant, nicknamed the Titan.
The Titan. That's quite a name.
There's a portrait of him hanging on the wall in their house. He was Richard's great-grandfather, a mulatto slave who was eventually freed, and his manumission papers describe him as being full 7 feet.
7 feet tall.
Richard is terrified of growing into that man. He's afraid of losing his own identity and just becoming a physical anomaly, a local giant, a spectacle. He wants to blend in, to be perfect and unnoticed, but his own body is making him conspicuous, turning him into a landmark.
And the Lermontants, they seem like a heavy family to belong to. They're undertakers, right?
Very prosperous undertakers. The patriarch, Grand-Père, is a pillar of the community. He's a veteran of the War of 1812. He fought with the battalion of free men of color under Andrew Jackson at the Battle of New Orleans. He spends his days writing letters to Congress, demanding recognition and pensions for his fellow veterans. They are the absolute model of respectability and stability.
But there's a secret in the family. A silence. The missing uncles.
This is where you see the cracks in the Lermontant armor. Richard has 2 uncles, André and Michel. But their names are never spoken. They are ghosts in the house.
Why? What did they do?
They went to France, and they passed Blanc.
They passed for white.
They married white women. They completely severed their ties with their family and their race. They just disappeared into the white world. To Grand-Père, this is the ultimate betrayal. The text says he literally spits into the fireplace grate whenever the subject even comes close to being mentioned. Past Blanc, it's a curse.
So Richard is completely trapped. He knows he can't go to Paris because in his family, leaving is seen as a betrayal of your people. But staying means living in this suffocating, anxious, rule-bound box.
Which leads directly to his own moment of rebellion. It's not as dramatic as Marcel's, but it's just as significant. Marcel runs off to chase the madwoman, and Richard, distraught over his friend's behavior and this shocking news about Christophe, decides to do something he has never, ever done before. He goes to a dive bar.
A squalid waterfront bar. He just wants to get drunk.
He wants to feel something other than anxiety. He wants to commit a sin, to be imperfect for once in his life.
And something absolutely incredible happens in that bar. This is such a key scene for his character. He's sitting there forcing down this whiskey that he hates, and a drunk Irish laborer sits down next to him.
And the Irishman just starts complaining to Richard, venting. He complains about the heat, his boss, and then he starts complaining about the damn free niggers taking all the good jobs.
He's complaining to Richard about people of color.
He thinks Richard is white.
Richard is described as having an olive complexion, wavy black hair. He could be Spanish or Italian or French. But in this context, because he's dressed immaculately, because he carries himself with this quiet dignity, the Irishman reads him as a white gentleman.
And Richard, he says nothing. He doesn't correct him.
He feels, and this is a quote, a luxurious danger.
It's a moment of profound and terrifying absurdity. Here is Richard, a young man whose entire identity is defined by his status as a gens de couleur, but the legal and social limits placed upon him. And this white man, who represents the superior race according to the law of the land, is staring right at him, seeing him as an equal, a confidant.
The Irishman even says something like, how do you stand it living with them, living with all the quadroon wenches? It's just staggering.
It completely exposes the performative nature of race in New Orleans. It shows that it's all about costume, context, and perception. And Richard realizes, just for a second, that the walls of his prison are, in some ways, imaginary.
And then he laughs. He rushes out of the bar into the cool river breeze, and he just laughs. The bastard thought he was white.
It's a hysterical reaction, born of shock, but it's also a terrifying realization, because if the lines are that blurry, if they're that easy to cross by accident, then maintaining them takes constant, exhausting, lifelong effort. It just underscores the total absurdity of the caste system they're forced to live in.
Which brings us crashing back to the reality of those lines. Segment 4, the crisis at the cottage.
The consequences of Marcel's rebellion finally come home to roost.
He got expelled from school.
He ran out of Monsieur Delatte's academy in the middle of a lesson to go chase Juliet.
Yeah.
The teacher has had enough. He expels Marcel and, in a particularly cruel move, gives the final bill to Richard to deliver to Marcel's mother.
This has to be Richard's worst nightmare. He has to be the bearer of bad news to go to the St. Marie cottage and face Cecile.
And we need to take a moment to understand Cecile St. Marie. She is described as a stunning lady, always laced tight into a taffeta gown. But her entire existence is incredibly precarious.
She's a mistress.
She is the placée, the institutionalized mistress of Philippe, the white planter who is Marcel's father. Her entire lifestyle, the pretty cottage, the servants, the silk dresses, the money for Marcel's private education. It all depends on Philippe's continued protection. She has no legal claim to him or his fortune. She lives this life of perfect respectability, but it all hangs by a single thread.
So when Richard shows up and delivers the news that Marcel, her great hope, has been kicked out of school, she just loses it.
She completely breaks down. She starts screaming. But, and this is the key insight that Richard has later that night, she isn't really screaming at Richard. And she isn't even really screaming at the absent Marcel.
She screams, "Get out!" directly at her daughter, Marie.
Marie is standing in the shadows of the room, just witnessing this whole collapse. Marie is 13, described as an ivory beauty, just ripening into womanhood.
So why? Why does Cecile scream at her daughter when her son is the one who messed everything up?
Fear. It's pure, unadulterated, paralyzing fear. In this system, the son is the family's hope for legitimate advancement. If Marcel succeeds, if he becomes a professional, maybe goes to Paris, he can secure the family's future. If he fails, the family loses its anchor, its claim to respectability.
And what about Marie? What does that mean for her?
Marie's future is completely dependent on the family's standing. If the family falls into disgrace, Marie doesn't have the option of becoming a doctor or a lawyer. Her only available career path in this society is to follow in her mother's footsteps, to become a placée herself, to find a white protector.
So Cecile looks at her beautiful young daughter and just sees the whole vicious cycle repeating itself.
She sees the terrifying vulnerability. If Marcel ruins their reputation, Marie's value on that terrible marriage market drops.
Yeah.
Cecile's scream, that ferocious intimacy, as the text calls it, is the raw terror of a mother who knows exactly what this world does to beautiful women of color who don't have protection. She wants Marie to get out of the room, yes, but subconsciously she wants her to get out of this predetermined fate. She can't bear for her daughter to witness how fragile their whole life actually is.
That is absolutely heartbreaking.
It is the tragedy of the mother. It's the same tragedy as Juliet Mercier, just manifested differently. Both women are casualties of a society that severely restricts their agency. Cecile is driven to panic by the fear of loss. Juliet was driven to madness by actual loss.
Speaking of Juliet, Marcel hasn't given up on her. Which brings us to our last big section, segment 5, breaking the silence.
He is relentless.
Yeah.
After Richard leaves him after the confrontation, Marcel goes right back to the hunt.
He tracks Juliet to the French market. And we get this incredible, vivid description of her. She's mad, yes, but there's a power to her. She has this grace.
She carries a basket on her head with the rhythm and poise of an African vendeuse, a market woman. And Marcel is mesmerized. He realizes in that moment that she isn't just a ruined woman or a crazy person. She has a strength, a connection to a deeper heritage that his polite lace-curtain life has tried to erase. She is living without the mask of respectability.
And he finally confronts her. He walks right up to her in the middle of the market.
And he uses the magic word, the only word that could possibly get through to her. He says, "It's about Christophe. The papers in Paris say he is coming home."
And what's her reaction? Does she light up?
It's shock. Disbelief. "No!" she just gasps. But before they could really have a conversation, the world intrudes. Violence erupts.
A wagon driver, almost runs her over and then whips at her to get out of the way.
And Juliet. She doesn't cower, she doesn't shrink away, she attacks, she throws her cat at him.
She throws her cat into the man's face. That is an iconic image.
It's chaotic, it's insane, it's violent, but it breaks the stalemate. In the confusion, in the screaming, in the chaos, she grabs Marcel's hand.
And the text says her grip is moist and amazingly strong.
And she pulls him. She drags him away from the scene, down the street and across the one threshold he's been desperate to cross, behind her garden gate.
This is the moment. He's been staring at this decaying house for months, and now he's inside the walls.
And the second that gate closes, the noise of the city just vanishes. It's a sun-drenched yard with a ruined cistern and flowering vines everywhere. It's a secret, forgotten world.
And then she turns to him and she asks the question, the cliffhanger for this whole section of the narrative.
She looks right at him, this boy who has brought her this earth-shattering news, and she asks, Christophe, who is this man?
Who is this man? Wait, so does she not even know her own son's name anymore? Has her mind completely gone?
That's the terrifying ambiguity of it, isn't it? Is she so lost in her madness that she's forgotten him? Or is she asking who this Christophe is that Marcel is talking about, as if the public legend has no connection to the boy she remembers? Or is she denying the name entirely?
It just changes everything. Marcel thinks he's bringing her the best news in the world, the return of her son, and her response is, who is this man? It suggests that the idol Marcel and the whole community worships might be a complete stranger to his own mother.
Or that the pain of his absence was so profound, so all-consuming, that she had to surgically excise him from her memory just to survive.
So let's try to bring all these threads together. When we do this deep dive, what's the big picture that emerges?
I think what we're looking at is a collision course. It's inevitable. You have Marcel, the dreamer, the rebel, who is willing to blow up his entire future just to find something he feels is real. You have Richard, the anxious conformist, who is desperately trying to hold this perfect world together. And then you have this third figure, Christophe, the distant legend, who is about to become very, very real and crash into both their lives.
And the mothers. You can't forget the mothers.
The mothers are the ground zero of all this trauma. Cécile is holding on to sanity and respectability by a single thread of taffeta. Juliet has already let go of the thread and fallen into madness. But both of their lives are defined by the actions of men and the constraints of a society that gives them almost no options.
And the big takeaway from this deep dive, what should you, the listener, really hold on to?
I think it's that for the gens de couleur libre, excellence and education and respectability. These aren't just goals for self-improvement. They are survival mechanisms. You have to be perfect, like Richard tries to be, like the young Marcel was, because if you slip, there is no safety net. The law won't catch you. Society won't catch you. Marcel's rebellion isn't just teenage angst. It's a dangerous flirtation with complete social erasure. He is choosing to stare directly at the things, the starving Irish, the butcher's block, the neighborhood madwoman, that his entire class is desperate to ignore just to survive.
He's choosing to look at the ugly truth of his world rather than the beautiful lie his family has constructed.
Precisely. And that's a dangerous choice.
Which leaves us with a final provocative thought for you to mull over.
We saw Richard in that bar. He was mistaken for white. And for a fleeting moment, it was a source of amusement and power. We know his uncles went to France and Pass Blanc, and now they are never spoken of. They are erased. In a world where your identity literally determines your survival, what is the ultimate act of rebellion? Is it to proudly claim your heritage, like Christophe seems to be doing by returning to open a school? Or is it to disappear into whiteness completely, like the uncles?
Or is it what Marcel is doing?
Exactly. Is there a third path? Not fleeing and not conforming, but instead staying put and staring directly at the forbidden, the broken, and the mad parts of your own world and saying, this is part of me too.
That's something to chew on. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of the gens de couleur.
It's a fascinating, tragic, and absolutely compelling world.
We'll see you next time.